"Get out of my house and never return," he thundered, his voice trembling with fury. Adanna stood frozen, her heart shattering with the weight of his words. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she dared not show them. With her father's final, crushing command, she knew there was no turning back. Alone, pregnant, and cast out, Adanna was forced into the unknown. How would she survive without anyone's help? What would become of her unborn child? The storm of uncertainty loomed. Follow her journey to find out. It was exactly this time 5 years ago that Adanna was sent out of the house by her father. Adanna's life had taken a turn for the worse when her father demanded to know the man responsible for her pregnancy. The name she mentioned stunned everyone: Chinedu, a man who was the epitome of respect and integrity in no kingdom. Chinedu was no ordinary man. He was a beacon of hope and pride for the community. Living abroad and only visiting during Yuletide, he was known for his generosity. He provided for the elderly, brought gifts for children, and treated everyone with kindness. Every young woman in the village dreamed of being with him, but Chinedu always focused on his ambitions, uninterested in romantic relationships. So, when Adanna claimed Chinedu was responsible for her pregnancy, disbelief spread like wildfire. How could someone as virtuous as Chinedu engage in such behavior? Chinedu himself vehemently denied the allegations before returning abroad. His denial seemed truthful to everyone. After all, he had a spotless reputation. The gossip spiraled out of control, turning Adanna and her family into objects of ridicule. People whispered cruel things. Adanna's father wants to climb out of poverty using his daughter's lies. How dare she taint Chinedu's good name? Adanna's father, overwhelmed by the shame and desperate to preserve his reputation, did the unthinkable. He sent Adanna away. "Leave my house and never return," he thundered, his voice breaking with anger and fear. With nowhere to go, Adanna wandered aimlessly, her heart shattered and her spirit crushed. The betrayal and rejection she had endured weighed heavily on her, leaving her lost and hopeless. Her dreams of a better life seemed like distant memories, now replaced by the harsh reality of survival. She eventually found herself in the bustling city of Onitsha, a place teeming with life but offering little comfort to a young, vulnerable woman like her. For days, Adanna roamed the streets, seeking refuge wherever she could. She slept on cold pavements, the hard ground bruising her body and spirit. Hunger gnawed at her relentlessly, forcing her to scavenge through trash bins or beg strangers for scraps of food. Many turned away, some offered pity, but most ignored her entirely. Her growing belly was a constant, undeniable reminder of her predicament, a silent witness to her despair and the life she was fighting to protect. One fateful afternoon, Adanna collapsed outside a small, busy restaurant, weak from hunger and exhaustion. A kind woman named Auntie Ifeoma noticed her and hurried over. "My dear, are you okay?" she asked gently, helping Adanna to her feet and guiding her inside. Seeing her fragile state, Auntie Ifeoma didn't hesitate to offer her a meal and a safe place to rest. Later that evening, after closing the restaurant, Auntie Ifeoma sat Adanna down to learn more about her. "Where are you from? Who is your husband? And what are you doing in Onitsha all alone?" she asked. With tears streaming down her face, Adanna poured out her story of rejection, heartbreak, and survival. Auntie Ifeoma listened with compassion, her eyes softening with pity. "You're too young to be suffering like this," she said. "For now, stay with me. You need a safe place." Under Auntie Ifeoma's care, Adanna began to heal, both physically and emotionally. In return, she helped out at the restaurant, gradually regaining her strength. Over time, she saved enough money to rent a tiny room of her own. Months later, Adanna gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Ibuka, meaning God is great. Ebuka became her source of hope and purpose. His laughter was her solace, and his tiny hands gave her the strength to keep fighting. Despite her struggles, she poured every ounce of love and determination into building a better life for her son. Meanwhile, Chinedu returned to Nigeria to establish a business and got married to the love of his life, Edeora. Their wedding was a grand celebration, the talk of the town. The community rejoiced, showering them with blessings and gifts. But 2 years into their marriage, the whispers began. When would they have children, people asked. At first, the couple brushed off the comments, but as the years passed with no pregnancy, the pressure mounted. It had been 5 years now, and still, Adora's womb remained empty. One afternoon, Edeora was in the market buying foodstuffs when a woman, out of nowhere, hurled a cruel insult at her, calling her a barren woman. The words cut deep, striking her heart and leaving her shaken. That night, she tossed and turned, unable to sleep, her mind tangled in the harshness of the remark. Chinedu, her husband, noticed her distress and gently held her as she lay awake. "Don't worry, my love," he whispered softly, trying to ease her pain. "We will have our own children, and nothing anyone says can change that. You are not alone in this." The couple visited numerous hospitals, consulting renowned specialists and running endless tests, hoping for answers. Despite their efforts, every doctor reassured them that there was nothing physically wrong with either of them. Frustrated and desperate for a solution, they turned to traditional remedies, visiting herbalists and elders who promised miraculous cures. They adhered to strict regimens and consumed countless concoctions, but nothing worked. Adora's childlessness persisted, becoming a heavy burden on their hearts. Friends and family offered unsolicited advice, further deepening their anguish. Though outwardly strong, Adora's smile masked the silent pain of her unfulfilled longing for motherhood. Desperation eventually drove Adora's mother to intervene. She insisted they visit a powerful native doctor in their village, a man renowned for solving even the most hopeless cases. Reluctantly, Edeora and her husband agreed, clinging to the faint hope that this could be the solution they so desperately needed. The journey to the remote village was long and filled with an uneasy silence. Upon arrival, the native doctor welcomed them with a knowing smile and promised to help. Rituals began immediately. Incantations echoed in the dimly lit hut, and elaborate sacrifices of animals and rare items were made to appease the gods. Days turned into weeks of adhering to the native doctor's instructions, drinking bitter concoctions and performing rituals under the moonlight. Despite their unwavering commitment, nothing changed. Adora's womb remained empty, and the couple was left questioning whether their dreams of parenthood would ever be realized. As Chinedu and Edeora grappled with the heartbreak of their struggles, Adanna's life was blossoming. Guided by her supportive friend Ifeoma, she transformed her small-room business into a bustling restaurant in the heart of Onitsha. Starting with just a few customers, her dedication and exceptional cooking skills earned her loyal patrons. Word of her delicious meals spread quickly, drawing crowds from near and far. Adanna's resilience and determination became an inspiration to many, and she soon gained respect as one of the most successful businesswomen in the area. Her achievements were a testament to her perseverance, but her greatest joy came from her son, Ebuka. At 5 years old, he was full of life and energy, with his father's striking features, a constant reminder of her past but also a source of immense pride. Adanna's journey was a bittersweet one, but she cherished the life she had built. Adanna believed she had moved on, bearing the pain of her past beneath the success of her thriving restaurant and the joy of raising Ebuka. Yet, in quiet moments, the memories resurfaced, uninvited and relentless, reminding her that some wounds, no matter how well hidden, never truly heal. One Sunday morning, Chinedu and Edeora decided to visit a new church in their neighborhood. The service was lively, filled with songs and prayers, but it took a tense turn when the pastor began to prophesy. "There is a man here," he declared, his voice resolute, who denied responsibility for a child. The mother of that child suffered greatly, and her tears shut the heavens against you. Chinedu felt as though the ground beneath him had vanished. His heart pounded uncontrollably, and beads of cold sweat trickled down his face. The pastor's words struck him like a thunderbolt, each syllable reverberating in his mind with an unsettling intensity. He couldn't shake the eerie sense that the message was meant for him. Beside him, Adanna clung to his hand tightly, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. She glanced at him repeatedly, searching his face for answers, but Chinedu forced a composed expression, pretending ignorance. The pastor's voice grew louder, his words cutting through the air like a blade. "You must seek forgiveness from the woman you wronged," he proclaimed, his gaze scanning the congregation. "Only then will the curse be lifted." Chinedu's throat went dry, his secret threatening to unravel. He avoided Adanna's gaze, but the guilt clawed at his soul. When they returned home, the weight of the prophecy hung heavily in the air, thick and oppressive. Chinedu could feel his heart pounding as he led Adanna to the living room. He sat down beside her, his hands trembling visibly. In his mind, he was contemplating whether to open up to his wife or not. Finally, his voice broke the silence, barely audible. Taking a deep breath, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Adanna," he said, avoiding her gaze, "the pastor's prophecy, it was about me." Adanna furrowed her brows, confusion flashing across her face. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern and curiosity. Chinedu swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "Years ago, I denied responsibility for a pregnancy. A woman I was with told me she was carrying my child. I denied her and turned my back on her. I never imagined it would lead to this." The color drained from Adanna's face as she processed his confession. Her initial shock gave way to anger and pain, her features twisting as tears spilled down her cheeks. "How could you?" she whispered, her voice quivering with pain and disbelief. Her hands trembled as she clutched the edge of her seat. "How could you do something so cruel, Chinedu? To me. To us." She cried bitterly, her heart breaking as the betrayal of her husband's past weighed heavily on her. Yet, as her sobs subsided, love and faith began to soothe her spirit. Though deeply hurt, she eventually forgave him, hoping they could move forward together. Haunted by the prophecy, Chinedu couldn't rest until he sought forgiveness. The search for Adanna was not only daunting but also deeply humiliating. He had to admit his past mistakes to people he had once dismissed, enduring scornful looks and biting remarks. Days turned into weeks before he finally found her, running a modest restaurant in a bustling part of Onitsha. When Chinedu and Adanna entered the restaurant, Adanna froze mid-step. Her heart thudded painfully as old wounds she thought had healed reopened. She recognized him instantly. Memories of rejection, humiliation, and the lonely nights she cried herself to sleep came rushing back. Nearby, Ebuka, her son, paused his plate to stare curiously at the strangers. His white, innocent eyes bore a striking resemblance to Chinedu's. "Adanna," Chinedu began, his voice trembling with guilt and uncertainty. "I've come to ask for your forgiveness." His words hung in the air, but Adanna remained silent, her expression unreadable. She glanced at him briefly, her face hardening, then turned her attention to the customers at her bustling restaurant. Ignoring Chinedu and Adanna's presence, she sent her young son, Ebuka, inside and coldly gestured for them to leave. Despite Chinedu and Adanna's repeated pleas, Adanna refused to respond. Their words fell on deaf ears as she maintained her icy silence. Realizing they were getting nowhere, they reluctantly left, burdened by the weight of their unresolved guilt. That evening, back in the village, Chinedu and Adanna sat together, discussing their next step. Adanna suggested seeking help from Adanna's family, particularly her father, Motsi Uche. Early the next morning, they made their way to Motsi Uche's house. At first, they were warmly received by the family, unaware of the purpose of their visit. However, when Chinedu and Edeora began pleading for forgiveness, Motsi Uche's demeanor changed instantly. His face darkened with anger, and he nearly threw them out. "How dare you show your face here after what you've done?" he roared. But his wife, Neoma, intervened, calming him down and urging him to listen. Reluctantly, Motsi Uche accepted their apology but warned, "The person you truly owe an apology is Adanna herself." He then agreed to accompany them to Onitsha to plead with his daughter. When Adanna saw them standing at the entrance of her restaurant, including her father, her eyes filled with tears, but not from pity. They brimmed with anger and deep-seated disbelief. She stiffened, her voice cold and unyielding. Chinedu stepped forward, his hands trembling. "Adanna, I am so sorry for what I did. Please forgive me," he pleaded, his voice thick with regret. "Forgiveness," she echoed sharply, her tone cutting through the air. "Do you even understand the pain you caused me? You denied me when I needed you the most. You humiliated me, abandoned me, and left me to raise our child alone without a shred of support." Chinedu lowered his head in shame, unable to meet her piercing gaze. "I know," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I was a coward, blinded by pride and selfishness. Please, Adanna, I beg you to find it in your heart to forgive me." Her father, Motsi Uche, stepped forward. "Please, my daughter," he pleaded, his tone softer now. "Forgive them. Let peace reign." Adanna's voice trembled with emotion as she turned to him. "Even you, Papa," she said, her anger spilling over. "You never believed me. You chased me out of the house like I was nothing, leaving me to meet my end. But thank God, I survived." There was a tense silence. Edeora finally spoke with tears in her eyes, her tone pleading. "Adanna, I know Chinedu wronged you, and you have every right to be angry. But please, forgive us, not for us, but for the sake of our unborn children. Your forgiveness is the only thing that can bring us peace." Adanna's gaze shifted to Ebuka, who had wandered closer, watching the exchange with wide eyes. The boy had her eyes, but his jawline and nose were unmistakably Chinedu's. Her mind filled with memories of sleepless nights, of starving herself to feed her son, of sacrifices made to build a life from nothing. She bit her lip, torn between pain and the hope of closure. "I will forgive you," Adanna said finally, her voice steady and calm, though her heart still ached. "But not for your sake, for mine and for Ebuka's. He deserves to grow up knowing his father, no matter how much you failed us." Tears streamed down Chinedu's face as he knelt before her, his heart heavy with guilt and regret. "Thank you, Adanna. Thank you," he whispered, unable to contain the flood of emotions. As peace began to settle between them, Chinedu, feeling a wave of relief, spoke again, his voice full of hope. "Yes, it's true that Chinedu is my son, but for now, he will stay with you. When he's old enough, he can decide for himself if he wants to come back to us. In the meantime, I'll do everything in my power to help expand your business and take it to new heights." A few days later, Adanna reunited with her family, and as promised, her restaurant business flourished. 9 months later, Edeora gave birth to a healthy, bouncing baby girl, filling their home with joy and new beginnings.
Thank you for watching. Tell us your opinion in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel Chukwudi Alaulor Studio at Chukwudi Alaulor.
Like and subscribe.